ये रिश्ता अब्बा वाला कहलाता है Pakistanis and the Turkish. So Turkey always wants that Pakistan should back them in Middle East.
But in the recent Operation Sindoor and Turkey has sided with Pakistan.
Turkey's own behavior within the NATO countries. It's quite questionable, right? Their idea is about influencing Muslim minds everywhere. जो कश्मीर में जो जर्नलिस्ट थे, जो पाकिस्तानी narrative चलाते थे, जो separatist के बड़े close थे, that whole ecosystem we had in Kashmir. About 22 to 25 of those went to Turkey. They are living in Turkey today. Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani, if you remember the Hudaybiyah conference, hawk, his granddaughter lives in Turkey. Because Pakistan politically is a very radicalized country. I think there will be a lot of heat starting next month in June, July, where things are going to get serious between India and Pakistan. Again, you'll see a lot of diplomatic war happening. You'll see a lot of statements coming in from a lot of countries. So yes, India has to be careful on that front. Propaganda or information warfare is not only about propaganda or fake news. There is something which is far more dangerous, which is called the subtle messaging to the minds.
Hello and welcome to the Pamphlet War Room. मैं हूँ निर्वा मेहता and today we have Raja Muneeb again with us. Hello Raja Muneeb, welcome back to the Pamphlet War Room.
Thank you, Nirwa. It's always a pleasure to be back in the war room.
All right. Let's talk about Pakistan and Turkey. ये रिश्ता क्या कहलाता है?
ये रिश्ता अब्बा वाला कहलाता है. Pakistanis and the Turkish have a very old relationship. आज से नहीं है. But अगर आप देखोगे 1962 onward से, right, Pakistan has had some influence on Turkey. Turkey has had some influence on Pakistan. But Erdogan के आने के बाद से this relationship has become, you can say, more stronger, right? Since 2003 when Erdogan came into power, Erdogan का जो sole objective था, that was to create Turkey once again and something like an Ottoman Empire. So he wants to take, the power of from the Saudis.
The caliphate, correct.
Yeah, the caliphate. He wants to rebuild that caliphate. And for that caliphate, he recognizes that Pakistan is very important because of Pakistan's nuisance value and also Pakistan being a nuclear country, right? So that is what their relationship is all about. They work together on a lot of fronts, a lot of geopolitical interest. So whether anything is happening in where, you can say, take Bangladesh for instance, right? They're working together in Bangladesh as well. Middle East. So Turkey always wants that Pakistan should back them in Middle East because if you look at traditionally, it's been Saudis where the Pakistanis have always inclined to at the end of the day, right? But now the competition between Saudi Arabia and Turkey is such that Turkey wants to wean away that influence of Saudi Arabia from Pakistan and make Pakistan stand behind them. So Middle East mein Turkey is looking for help. So they work on a lot of issues very together and they're quite aligned to their thought of this Caliphate movement जो है. तो आप पाकिस्तान से भी देखो because of the way Pakistan is, it always is,
Right, the dominance, correct.
Not only the dominance, उनका रोज का बैंड बाजा वही होता है कि we are an Islamic country, right? The narrative is that, which is not, they are not an Islamic country, but the narrative is as such. So I think there is a lot of a good partnership between Turkey and Pakistan.
Right, but in the recent Operation Sindoor and Turkey has sided with Pakistan. There are two countries that have very openly condemned India's actions. One is Turkey, one other is Azerbaijan. But why do you think Turkey would want to side with Pakistan and not India, considering India is obviously a bigger space, has more strategically placed than Pakistan is? Why would it want to choose or side with Pakistan?
See, it's not only after Operation Sindoor that Turkey has gone ahead and chosen, Pakistan.
Correct.
If you remember abrogation of Article 370, 2019, Turkey was the only one which came into, you can say, support of Pakistan very openly in UNSC as well. And 2021, 2022, Turkey has always been there talking about Kashmir, raking up Kashmir issue. Erdogan has always been very, very vocal about it. So it's about, as I said, that it's the ideological bonding between Pakistan and the ideological dependence between Pakistan and Turkey that drives it, rather than Turkey's own economic benefits when it comes to India. Because obviously siding with India would then automatically mean that you are somewhere where before Erdogan, Turkey was somehow, which was like having very cordial relationships. But I think this time around, Turkey has gone ahead and driven that red line by Erdogan making that very important statement saying that I'm going to stand behind Pakistan no matter what. So he has made its intentions very, very clear. So any ambiguity which was there between 2019 and 2025 till Operation Sindoor happened, that ambiguity is completely gone now when it comes to Turkey. So it's and also if you look at the Turkey's own behavior within the NATO countries, it's quite questionable, right? So, and Turkey has been increasingly now gravitating more towards, if you look at the what we call the China, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey axis, which is an alternate proc to the Americans, Saudis, Israelis, and India, right? So, I think Turkey is more gravitating for its own geopolitical heft in the region, looking at a more consolidated, being a more consolidated power center in the Middle East. It has its own ambitions, geopolitical ambitions. And definitely India doesn't fit in that geopolitical ambition. Pakistan fits completely in that geopolitical ambition.
But can Turkey afford to have this kind of relationship with Pakistan while at the cost of its relationship with India?
How do you translate that into a relationship between India and Turkey, right? So you have to look at the cost benefit analysis of this. So if you say that can they afford it, they have been affording it since ages. They have had very strong relationship with Pakistan. On contrary to India, all they were trying to do was they were trying to build some of trade and some of economy, and trade is something which was the commonality between the Turkish and the Indians. But I think Erdogan is willing to go that to let that go. In fact, if you remember the last, I think it was the G20 summit. Yes, it was the G20 summit, where both India and Turkey were about कि let's trade about $10 billion तक अपना trade जो है इसको ले जाते हैं, and there were efforts to that as well. But obviously that economic calculation is not sitting well with the geopolitical ambition Turkey has, and Turkey is willing to forego that. So that's how, and also I believe that Turkeys would be looking at, if you want to extract more out of us, then maybe you need to open your economy more to us for us to lower the stance as well, or soften the stance towards Pakistan. But I don't think that entirely is a consideration here. It has got to do more with the alternate power bloc, which is being led by the Chinese, and Turkey's own ambition in Middle East and in South Asia to become the caliphate. Back to that glory days of before the Ottoman Empire broke, which was before the World War One. So I think it's driven more by that. It's driven more by sense of old civilization or old history, rather than it's a resurgence of, I would say, a sense of civilizational thing for the Turkish, especially Erdogan, because Erdogan is somebody who is who's basically a Islamist in his mindset, right? He closely aligns with the Muslim Brotherhood ideology. And it makes perfect sense for him to forego whatever he has with India at the cost of Pakistan, because for him, he thinks that whatever he will let go from India, he might be duly rewarded by the Chinese in a better way, or he might be able to forge a better relationship with the Chinese, so he might be able to fill in that gap from China. That could be a calculation made by him as well. We have to see whether that calculation is going to fall into its place and bear some fruit. But I think that is what the calculation for him for now would be.
So a lot of forcent accounts on X, and especially recently there was a thread on X by Disinfo Lab, very prominent account. They talked about the relationship between the anti-India movement and sentiments being propagated by Turkey as well as Pakistan, which have been in tandem with each other. Okay, a lot of them. I think more of since you said earlier also that this has not been a recent phenomenon, but I think we have become more aware of it since abrogation of 370, when the anti-India trends and boycott India, all those trends started coming up, and we figured out that this is not just in isolation. But Turkish bots, Turkish accounts are also behind a lot of these social media trends. What I want to ask, what interest does Turkey have in Kashmir?
See, it's not only about Kashmir. And as I said, they have global ambitions, right? Their idea is about influencing Muslim minds everywhere. Now, key to this was Imran Khan in Pakistan. So, what happened is from 2019 onwards, and before that as well, Imran, when I think, yeah, when Imran had come into power in Pakistan, 2018, he met Erdogan, and that is where they set up a joint information warfare campaign, or you can say a joint information warfare strategy was laid for the broader Muslim world. And Kashmir figured into that prominently because Kashmir is very, very important for Pakistan. So obviously the Turkish are going to support. But what they did was they hired about 300 journalists from Pakistan alone. So this war room, you can call it a war room. It actually is an information war room. It operates out of Turkey. ठीक है, इसमें 300 जो हैं वो पाकिस्तानी जर्नलिस्ट हैं. उसके बाद जब एब्रोगेशन आर्टिकल 370 हुआ, उसमें जो कश्मीर में जो जर्नलिस्ट थे, जो पाकिस्तानी नैरेटिव चलाते थे, जो सेपरेटिस्ट के बड़े क्लोज थे, that whole ecosystem we had in Kashmir, about 22 to 25 of those went to Turkey. They are living in Turkey today, and they run the anti-Kashmir narrative from there, right? Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani, if you remember the Hurriyat conference, hawk, his granddaughter lives in Turkey, Ruwasha. So all these people who were affiliated with Kashmiri separatism sentiment and became their mouthpieces and had this gravitating towards ISI and Pakistan, they shifted from overnight, literally from, some of them were in Delhi, they left from Delhi and they went to Turkey, someone from Kashmir to Turkey. So this whole narrative is, we look at it from Kashmir angle because Pakistan is important, Kashmir is important to Pakistan. But if you look at how they operate, everywhere there is a conflict in any Muslim world, they are equally active trying to influence the Muslim minds. Let's say there is a conflict in Syria, which is there, right? So they're putting that, trying to do information warfare in Turkey, also trying to sell the idea of Turkey and have that geopolitical alignment which they want to have. Same thing is in Africa. So TRT world will be focused on Syria, on Syrian conflict. TRT world is focused in Africa, in Somalia and other places as well. TRT world is focused on Afghanistan as well, driving the Turkish narrative there, discrediting the Saudis. TRT world is also works in tandem with Qatar's Al Jazeera channel, right? They do a lot of stuff together. Similarly, TRT World also does things against Kashmir because they have specialized people sitting from Kashmir and Pakistan whose only focus is about Kashmir and Pakistan, to change Pakistan's narrative and to push Pakistan's narrative, to push the Turkish narrative, to push this global Khalifa kind of an image. So this global, when in Kashmir also, when you talk about Caliphate, or they say that we relate with the Ummah, it doesn't come from ISIS or it doesn't come from Al Qaeda. It comes from all those propaganda channels which are run from Pakistan and from Turkey, or led by Al Jazeera and TRT World more than Al Jazeera, who have been able to influence minds in Kashmir where people would have associated themselves with the larger Khalifa or larger Ummah movement. And then obviously then it snowballs into recruitment of terrorism and all that. We know that how it works. I won't explain it, till the end line, but that is how it works. Influence the mind, then look at the disgruntled, then recruit them for this thing, and then perpetrate terrorism. So that is how it actually works. So that is their interest in Kashmir as well. The interest is their global interest, in which not only Kashmir, but Syria, Afghanistan, Africa, America, Canada, Europe, everything, the Muslims all over the world. So
wherever there is a conflict,
even if there is not a conflict, look at the messaging of TRT World when it comes to Europe, when it comes to those immigrations in Italy or in Europe. They talk about Rohingyas a lot.
So the Muslim victim is where they find their cause.
Yes, they talk about Bangladesh a lot. They talk about Rohingyas a lot, right? So anywhere where there is a potential of a conflict, there is a conflict. Or if there is not a conflict, there is, any Muslim anywhere in the world is on their radar for their own information warfare purposes. That is where it is. That is how deep this relationship is.
I also, along with this, there have been these reports and a lot of these. So Pakistan, a lot of them earlier they have always felt that Saudi is the leader of Islamic world, right? But over the years, their sentiment has also changed, and there are these three countries like there's Qatar fighting for it. There's Turkey now also fighting for to be the leader of the Muslim world, the Islamic world. You think that this the Pakistan now suddenly wants to cozy up to Turkey to to feel like one of their own because they see soft power, right? When you talk about Netflix series that Ertugrul that was also based on Ottoman Empire, that
Yeah. So
fictitious version, they got it dubbed in Urdu. That's on YouTube
so
everywhere.
that is a classic example of information warfare of influencing the minds. So if you look at if Ertugrul and how big a hit it became, not only in Pakistan,
In India as well,
in
Rana, you
India,
have a lot of people they have been
in India,
raving about it.
in India, in Kashmir,
Right,
the influence it had on the minds people of mind of the people.
right.
That tells you how how sophisticated their information warfare machinery is. Now Pakistan has always been towards the Saudi, one because of the money they get from Saudis. Second thing, we all know that all the Afghan war was led by the Saudis. The Saudi money was the primary thing into the Afghan war, which happened in the 80s. It was the Saudis who got everything done, along with the Americans and Pakistanis. But Saudis were front runner of those. But now the shift in Saudi Arabia is something which is which doesn't suit Pakistan politically, because Pakistan politically is a very radicalized country. So for that ideological, you can say, mooring, to still stand at that radicalized Ummah global Caliphate mindset, Pakistan gravitates towards Turkey. But saying that, that doesn't mean they have spoiled their relationships with the Arabs, right? They still are in good books of the Arabs. They want to stay in good books of the Arabs. So it's both ways. The Pakistan is able to balance its relationship with Saudi Arabia and with Turkey. And the more Pakistan has lost on the Saudi front, if you remember MBS visit to Pakistan when Imran was the prime minister, and then suddenly Saudi is asking for the $2 billion loan back immediately. That told you that things didn't go very well between the Pakistanis and the Saudis. So Saudis have started developing you can say, a sort of a cold shoulder when it comes to Pakistan. And Turkey has been, warming up to the Pakistanis. But Saudis are not going to completely abandon Pakistan. That is not going to happen as well. Right? So it's a delicate kind of a balance within the Muslim world as well. It's a very delicate kind of a balance happening. It's gonna play out itself in many years. But look, when you talk about Qatar, you need to understand that once the Saudis got rid of the radical terror Islamist organizations, they didn't want to do anything with them. They didn't want to fund them after MBS has come into power. I think Qatar has realized that there is a lot of opportunity to be the new Saudi Arabia when it comes to harvesting or harboring these terror organizations and become an important geopolitical player. And that is what we have seen in Afghanistan. It was only in Qatar that the Doha Agreement was signed between Taliban and America. Right? It's Qatar where Hamas leadership resides. It's Qatar where everybody turns to when there is, they want to have some kind of a dialogue. And Qatar has its own relationship with organizations like ISIS or Hamas or, any terror organization. So I think the dirty work which the Saudis now refuse to do for the terror organizations, because Qatar is also pretty rich and they can afford it, unlike Turkey. Qatar has picked up that thing and they want to use and milk this terrorism, Islamic extremism terrorism, for their own geopolitical benefit in the Middle East. Because look, Turkey, as hard as it might to try, Turkey cannot replace the petrodollars. Turkey doesn't have the economy what the Saudis have. Turkey doesn't have the money what the Saudis were willing or can splurge. when it comes to spending money. So Turkey doesn't have that economic power. The economic arm is not there. It's not strong enough. But the Qataris have. Right? So that is why you see both of them coming together. And obviously the Qataris and the Saudis are rivals. They don't see eye to eye. They all have their own problems, right? The Saudis just refuse to recognize Qatar in UAE. Right? So it's an axe to grind against the Saudis, and the Qataris have completely picked up where the Saudis left this mess. And now Qataris are a part of the game as well.
During this Operation Sindoor and the Pahalgam conflict, right, there were reports that Turkey sent across cargo planes filled with the equipments to fight to Pakistan for them to fight against India. Turkey has denied these reports. They have said we've not done that, but there have been reports. We don't know. They have had relationship of exchange. They have purchased arms and all. So that is correct, but this particular conflict, Turkey has denied sending the arms during the fight. In last 1 month, Shehbaz Sharif has met Erdogan twice, and how so that brings me to how Pakistan and Turkey, how they have been indulging in the information warfare against India, because a lot of these reports also suggest that there are a lot of NGOs run by the Turkish people, the leaders, and that they have directly, indirectly, and that is how they have been propagating the anti-India narrative on X and via other mainstream media, especially the TRT World and other such media organizations. Uh, do you see that? Is that just a conspiracy theory? Do you think how much of that is correct? And how important and how damaging is it for India?
That's a good question, but your question has two parts. So I'll answer the first part and the second part.
Okay.
The first part relates to your about the Turkey-Pakistan relationship when it comes to defense equipment. Now, look, before Operation Sindoor started, right? Any OSINT account you will see will tell you how many Turkish planes have landed into Pakistan, right? And leave the OSINT accounts on the side. We have wreckage of Turkish drones which we shot down all over our borders when the Pakistanis started that account, right? So it's no secret, or it's not a hidden secret that the Turkish and the Pakistanis are not aligned when it comes to defense equipments. The Turkish had given them the drones, we shot down that drone. So the proof is there, right? The proof is in the pudding of eating it. So that is one part of it. And I mean, that relationship would be there. Shehbaz Sharif went there twice. Why he went there twice? It has a reason. One is that the Pakistanis wanted to acquire more drones from the Turkish. Right? The Turkish doesn't have the supply to provide Pakistan, additional drones at this moment. They don't have that bandwidth now. But then they offered them to buy it via Azerbaijan. So yesterday, a Globe Master has landed, 5,000 has landed in Pakistan from Dushanbe, carrying this Azerbaijani drones. 400 of them have been bought, right? So one is that. Second is Shehbaz Sharif is also trying to get together with Erdogan on how to take this forward, because this Operation Sindoor has not stopped. India-Pakistan hostility has not stopped. Pakistan thinks that it has seized a moment where it can again internationalize the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, and for that they are, they're trying to sit together and trying to see what all they can do on the international front, on the diplomatic front, on putting pressure on India to come on a dialogue table. IWT is going to be extremely critical. I think there will be a lot of heat starting next month, in June, July, where things are going to get serious between India and Pakistan. Again, you'll see a lot of diplomatic war happening. You'll see a lot of statements coming in from a lot of countries. So yes, India has to be careful on that front. Now, when it comes to information warfare and and the accounts you're mentioning, especially I think the Disinfo Lab one you're talking about, it's been going on since ages. It's been going on for a very long time. So that is what I said. If you look at the modus operandi, you have Turkey, you have Pakistan, you have Germany, you have America, you have UK. And then you have all these players who head these things. For example, Kashmir Civitas, Gravitas Group, right? Or Muzammil Ayub Thakur sitting in UK, one of the biggest kingpin of running this information warfare at the behest of ISI. He has been at the forefront of it, right? He's very closely aligned to the Turkish intelligence agencies, not only to Turkish intelligence agencies, but there are photographs out there where you would see him sitting with Erdogan himself. Right? Erdogan's brother is somebody who oversees this whole information warfare operation from the hilt. So obviously, it's not only about NGOs. We know how the ecosystem works. You have the media houses,
Right.
you have the NGOs, you have the activists, right? Then you have the violent activists, then you have the terrorists. So this all is interconnected. So you have all these organizations from Africa to Europe to America to UK to India to South Asia to East Asia to West Asia, where they operate in tandem with a commonality of messaging, which I call, right? So they will do a lot of things. They would be equating Palestine with Kashmir. They'll do conference on Palestine. They will rake up Kashmir. They will do conferences on Kashmir. They will talk about Syria. They will talk about Palestine. They'll be anti-Israel. So there is that kind of a, they try to build that kind of a narrative and bring them on one plate. And it's quite open the way these organizations work against India. That is why we have seen a lot of FCRs getting cancelled in India as well. We have we have actually woken up to the threat and we realize what it is. But the fact of the matter is that this is a very, very dangerous information warfare, the machinery which operates out of Turkey. And it's not only which operates out of Turkey, it has branches in Europe, it has branches in UK, it has branches everywhere. And as I said, it's something which is very potent and which is very dangerous as well. So we have to be very, very careful. And look, it's not only about Kashmir. Look at the Indian Muslims, the way they target Indian Muslims, right? They want to create that gap between the Indian Muslims and the rest of the communities in India.
Perpetuating the victimhood, so that there's always the Muslim.
So there's all these Ranas and all they all come from Rana Ayub, Zubair, Arifa Khanum, and all this whole ecosystem.
The elite Muslims, they all want the rest of the Muslims to feel
because they all come from the Muslim Brotherhood ideology. Because in their minds, I don't know where they have got this illusion and how delusional they are, that they believe that this modern Islam is something which the Muslim Brotherhood shows them the mirror of.
Right.
Is the real thing, because behind that mirror is the reality, and the reality is reflected in Syria with Jolani, in Afghanistan, or what is happening in Africa, where the Al Qaeda and the ISIS are actually taking control. The world doesn't talk about Africa, but things in Africa are extremely bad. Especially countries like Sudan, countries like Nigeria, Chad, right? There's huge violence. There's a huge resurgence of terrorism, of Al Qaeda, Al Shabaab, ISIS. They are making a global resurgence from there. But it's just that it's far off, so it's not, it's not affecting us, so we're not talking about it. So yes, this is a very, very potent threat, Nirva. This is a threat we have to be very careful about.
So to conclude this, tell me one thing: how does India tackle this? We as a government, and we as someone who are the social media alert citizens, so to say, who are very active, and they track. They are very good at tracking things across. How do you think we can counter this attack on our sovereignty?
See, information warfare can be fought only in the domain of information warfare. So at the governmental level, what we require is, I believe, we need a centralized agency with a proper budget, proper focus, proper targets, and we need specialists handling those things. And by specialist, I don't mean people only from law enforcement or from military background. I mean journalists who understand this game very well. Right. So you need specialist people to sit there and to work there together to disseminate or to bust this propaganda narrative, because propaganda or information warfare is not only about propaganda or fake news. There is something which is far more dangerous, which is called the subtle messaging to the minds. Ertugrul Ghazi is a clear example of that, right? Or there's there's a lot of content which comes on YouTube, which comes on Instagram. There's a lot of emotional content which
Right,
comes in
right.
India. And you cannot debunk that by, just by shouting it down or shutting it down.
Because it's also not completely incorrect.
Yes, and then
Right.
also it's not about it's being correct or it's
Right.
not being incorrect. It's about how it is appealing you and how are you creating a different narrative out there in the world. How are you giving, for example, I'm showing you something, right? And you're looking at a content and you're getting consumed by that content. What does the other person has to offer you for you to make a choice or a decision saying that no, this makes sense as well, right? And that is where we lose. That is exactly why we lose our information warfare, because we don't have a concentrated information warfare center where we do it as a profession, where we do it as a cause, where we do it, I would say, professionally is the right word. Right? We don't have that. Everything is scattered. So we have people who will be fighting this in their own way. Social media is all about it. But there is no focus onto it. And it's not only on the war times you have to do it. Information warfare is an ongoing thing which happens 24/7, 365 a day. It keeps going on. So for that kind of a thing, you need to fight it every minute, every second, every hour, every day, every week, every month, every year. That's how it is supposed to be. So I think on governmental level, that is what is needed. On personal level, there are people, and everybody is on social media. I believe every Indian who's a nationalist, who's a patriot, is trying in his or her best capability and capacity to debunk anything what they see, or to call out what they see. So I think that is happening, but then we have to be very, very careful also, because sometimes we tend to overdo things, and the narrative works against us, because when you're playing the war of narratives, the biggest thing you have to take care of is also your reputation, your credibility. So sometimes our credibility takes a hit because we don't understand how to respond to things, and we tend to go overboard with things, and that creates a problem for us on the global narrative, because we have to understand that whatever information warfare or whatever narratives we are creating, it's not only for Indians we are creating, it's not just for our own people, but it's very, very essential to understand that influencing people sitting out of India, the rest of the world, where these guys are doing their subtle messaging and reaching those minds, you have to reach with your message. You have to reach out to them with your message. And that has to be proper, fact-based, logical, emotional, all of them clubbed together. So that is very, very important. I think that is where we lack.
Well, I think you and I are doing our bit as we are talking it, and I hope people will watch us and draw some good conclusions from this. And on that note, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Nirwa. It's my pleasure.
We will see you guys again next Tuesday at 8 p.m. on the Pamphlet War Room. Thank you so much.
Thank you.